Hi guys, I just want people to know that Palestine is not a country. Palestine is two territories that were the portions of land that were designated by the United Nations to the Palestinians in 1947. The Palestinians didn't create a country with that land. They didn't create a state. Um, they basically just left it as it was, as it is. Um, and it was obviously the Jews living next door to them, like they were living side by side on one area of land, and the United Nations partitioned that land, and they partitioned it into three pieces. Israel got one piece. The place that is now Israel got one piece, and the Palestinians got two pieces, and it was within both groups. Like they had the choice to create a state so that they could have like a nation state for their people, a home to call their own, and it'd be recognized as a country. But the Palestinians didn't take that opportunity. They were given the land, they got on the land, but didn't do anything with it. And what they did was um, they basically sort of devoted a lot of their energy into letting the state of Israel know how much the people hate the state of Israel, how much the Palestinians hate them, hate the state of Israel. And when I say the Palestinians, I mean the Palestinian nationalists and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement there. So these groups working alongside, for example, Hamas and Fatah and other movements that are focused on fighting an Islamic, quotes unquote, holy war in order to return the land that the state of Israel is on to the Palestinian people. So that's basically what happened when the land was partitioned. What the Jews did was create their own state. And that state was called the State of Israel. It's known as the Jewish state. It's the home of the Jewish people. Putting this into context, when this happened, the Holocaust had only happened a few years ago. Nazi Germany, coming up from like the late 30s to the mid 1940s, had been sort of carrying out a genocide of the Jewish people, and 6 million Jews were killed, and that event was known as the Holocaust. So the Jews needed a home of their own because wherever they'd been in the world over millennia, they had been persecuted with anti-Semitism. I'm going to do a separate video about that, but just in a nutshell, this anti-Semitism created expulsions. So sometimes the Jews were expelled from certain lands, sometimes they were simply exiled, sometimes they were driven out through pogroms, attacks of different natures. And so, they ended up migrating around the world and doing well, usually, where they settled, and then being forced out, being expelled from that place and having to find somewhere else. So when the Holocaust happened, the Jews went back to what is now the State of Israel. They went back to what at the time it was called British Mandate for Palestine. The British were controlling this land, which had been called Palestine for, I think, about the last 500 years. It was called lots of things prior to that, but it only came under British control in, I think it was 1922. Prior to that, it had been ruled by the Ottomans, by the Ottoman Empire. So that World War I happened, the British provided assistance to defeat the Ottomans, and sort of in reward for doing that, for successfully helping to defeat the Ottomans, the Brits were given a mandate to govern this area that was known as Palestine. So the Palestinians that were there at the time, there were Jews there at the time as well. There have always been Jews in that region. Going back to about 5,000 years ago, Judaism was born in that region. To put things in perspective, the Islam was created I think it's about 1,300 years ago, but Judaism was created nearly 5,000 years ago. So, in between the creation of Judaism and Islam, you had the creation of Christianity. Christianity was created around 2,000 years ago. So if you look at it this way, Judaism is the oldest of the siblings, Christianity is the second oldest, and Islam is the third oldest. The thing that Judaism and Christianity have in common is that they were created in the same area. And Islam was created in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so basically, at some point in history, this land that is now called Palestine, that's not now called Palestine. It was called Palestine until the Brits took it over, conquered it, if you will. And that's not to say the Brits went, it's not to say that the Brits went and conquered it from the Palestinians. They, as I said earlier, they helped defeat the Ottomans, who controlled that land. And as a result of helping to defeat them in the First World War, the Brits got control of that land. So, getting back to my point, because I'm going on a tangent, sorry about that. So Islam comes into the region a long time after Judaism and a long time after Christianity. And there's one reference to Jerusalem in the Quran. And this basically says that the Prophet Muhammad was carried to Jerusalem on a particular occasion, whereas with Christianity and Judaism, they were created in and around that area. And there is plenty of archaeological history that proves that. So, when the Jews were given their opportunity to create a home of their own so that they would, in theory, never have to suffer another Holocaust, never have to be strangers in another people's land, exiled, expelled, and all the rest of it, they jumped at that opportunity. And the first thing they did when the United Nations gave them that land was to create a state, the State of Israel. And so the issue that we're dealing with now is that, and I'm going to cover this in another video, the Palestinians, and without wanting to generalize, I'm not generalizing anybody here, I'm just saying that certainly the Palestinian nationals in the Palestinian territories, and certainly the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, both of these organizations I've just mentioned, they're operating in the Gaza Strip, one of the two Palestinian territories. They're operating in the Gaza Strip, and they are terror groups, or they are affiliated terrorist groups. So they support larger terrorist groups like Hamas, being the largest terrorist group in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip. I don't want to say Palestine because it's no longer called Palestine. It's either called the Palestinian territories or the State of Israel. And so, yeah, I correct myself when I say Palestine. So in one of the Palestinian territories, there is a huge terrorist organization called Hamas that helped the other terrorist organizations carry out the massacre on October 7th. So Hamas is the largest one, and it also happens to govern the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. So it's a government democratically elected since 2005 or 6, hasn't held an election since then, and has effectively used the Palestinian people as pawns to get money in from different countries in order to build up a weapons arsenal that they can use to attack Israel, which is what they've done for the longest period of time, at least since the 80s, since they were formed. But those attacks have been going on prior to that. So what they are fighting for is for not just to have a state. So the Palestinian nationalists are not necessarily influenced by their religion. They want a state for the Palestinian people. What the jihadis want is to conquer the state of Israel, destroy it, and replace it with an Islamic caliphate, an Islamic emirate, an Islamic state, either of those three things. An Islamic state which it will impose Sharia law and replace the population with Muslims. They want control. They want their glory days back of when they did control that land. But obviously they were conquered. The thing is, it's like if you own a land and you're conquered fair and square, as was, that was the way that things happened in those days. That was the era of empire. When the Ottomans ruled it, it was the era of empire. There was the British Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and numerous other empires that had gone before. The Roman Empire, for example. The Romans conquered that land at one point as well. And at one point, the Jews conquered that. In the time of the Jewish monarchy, King Saul, King David, and King Solomon, how they got to be in power there was because they conquered it from the Canaanites. So that was what people did in those days. Now we're not going around conquering different lands. We're not doing that anymore. But that was what was happening when the land was designated to split between the Jews and the Palestinians. That's just how it was. It's not, the Jews didn't conquer anything because the Jews didn't have an empire in the 1900s. So how could they possibly have conquered anything? But that was what was happening, and what these Palestinian nationalists want, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who are supported by the Islamic Jihads in Iran and other countries, they want to blow Israel and its people off the face of the earth and reclaim that land. But that's not how it works. If you lost your land because you were outnumbered, you was conquered by, not even by the Jews, by the British and the people that the Brits were allied with at that time. I'll cover it in another video. If you decide you want your land back, surely you would go to the people that gave the land away. Why are you going to the people that just live there now? The people that were given that land fair and square. Again, the Jews did not conquer that land. They were given that land. And that part of the reason was because they have a nearly 5,000-year history of being in that land. There's archaeological evidence. It's in the Bible. The God, let's say like Jesus Christ, I want to say the God of the Gentiles, but it's probably not the right way to say it. He is evidence that the Jews were there 5,000 years ago, because Jesus Christ was a Jew. How could Jesus have originated from there, being Jewish, if there were no Jews in that land? And this is what gets lost in all the anti-Palestinian rhetoric that's out there. So my issue is that the Palestinians never created a country or a state of their own. They didn't do it. They used their energy to throw hate at the state of Israel and the Jewish people. I'm not saying every single Palestinian did that. I'm just saying those organizations that I've mentioned, and there are a lot of those organizations. I think there are roughly sort of like 10 to 20 terrorist factions, militant groups that affiliate with out and outright terrorist organizations in at least the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So let's just put this into context as well. Israel is situated between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So Israel is the land, the state of Israel covers the land that is in the middle of the two Palestinian territories. So the poor old state of Israel has the West Bank on one side, complete with all its terrorists trying to conquer the state of Israel and wipe it off the map. And then it has the Gaza Strip on the other side, complete with all its terrorists trying to wipe Israel off the map. The Hamas massacre is one classic example of what that looks like when the two sides, when I say the two sides, I mean the terrorist terrorist groups on either side of the State of Israel. The massacre is what it looks like when those terrorist factions achieve their goal. And that, they're saying that they were doing this to avenge past perceived transgressions against the Palestinian people, and it's on the basis that the Islamic Jihad regard the land that the State of Israel is on as Palestinian land. They don't regard it as a State of Israel. The State of Israel doesn't exist in their thinking, except as something that has to be obliterated. And so, by not accepting the reality that the State of Israel is a state, it's legitimate, it was when the Jews created that state, declared their independence, everything they've done since then is designed to build up their country, build up their people on the international stage, and become a formidable player on the international stage. And they have done that. That's what they spent their time and energy doing. So the fact that these terrorist groups, either side of the State of Israel, refuse to acknowledge the State of Israel as a valid state, and even refuse to acknowledge it as the Jewish state, the Jewish homeland, the home of the Jews, the official, bona fide, legitimate, in political terms and in religious terms, home of the Jews, means that it's difficult to see how this could end. It's difficult to see how a two-state solution could work, because why should the Jewish people have to live next door to the terrorists that at every minute of their time are trying to eliminate them, trying to annihilate them? I can't imagine, here in the UK, the British, having, for example, terrorist groups in Cornwall, which is in the southwest of the country, and terrorist groups in Scotland, which is in the north of the country. Imagine if we were sandwiched between many terrorist organizations whose sole aim, according to according to their extremist interpretations of their religion, and according to the principles expressed in the founding charter of their organizations, wanted to annihilate the UK. That would never be a situation. The UK would never tolerate that. Neither would the US if a similar situation was there. Nobody's going to tolerate having neighbours that every minute of every day are trying to annihilate them and are being supplied with money on the basis that they're refugees, and then channeling that money away from the people that need it, the ordinary Palestinian citizens that are just raising kids and trying to find decent work, and just trying to get ahead in life like that, taking it away from them and spending it on weapons, arsenal, rocket launchers, and building 300-mile tunnels to launch rockets on Israel and coordinate terrorist attacks. So the two-state solution, that's really where we are with that right now. Since the Hamas massacre, that's definitely what the option, that's what the future would look like. It would be more of the same, more of October the 7th. Some of the leaders from these movements in the aftermath of October the 7th said that this was just a rehearsal. October the 7th was just a rehearsal. So we could only expect more bigger attempts at annihilating Israel to come in the future. So where am I going? Let me get back, because I think I'm on a tangent again. I'm really sorry. I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. Yes, and then the one-state solution. So the only one-state solution that some Palestinians see, the extremists, are one state, which is all the land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which would include the Israel. So all of that land named and renamed Palestine. So one state solution would be one state called Palestine, with Israel obliterated and the Jewish people obliterated along with it. So that's not feasible either, because even if there are enough decent ordinary Palestinians that just want to share equal citizenship with Israel, in the Jewish state, with Jewish people and other Israelis, even if there were some that wanted that, the fact that there are a lot of organised terrorist groups that want to annihilate the state of Israel and just create one state of Palestine in its place makes that impossible. So it's a difficult one. And that's where I'm going to leave it. As I said, there are other videos that I'm going to make, getting into more detail of this. Please leave your comments down below if you have any. See you next time. Thank you for watching.